Dr. Mahmoud Haki Akin from Istanbul Madaniyat University. Mute yourself, everybody, because of the echo. Dr. Akin graduated in 2003 from Uludağ University, Faculty of Arts and Sciences in the Department of Sociology. In 2005, he completed his master's degree, and in 2009, his doctorate. Just want to make sure we eliminate all the echoes. In 2009, he finished his doctorate degree with his dissertation titled Youth in the Process of Political Socialization, a Theoretical and Applied Study at Seljuk University Institute of Social Sciences, from the Department of Sociology. During one semester of his doctoral education, he took courses in the fields of politics and communication at Maastricht International Faculty of Communication. He worked as an academic at Seljuk University, Najmuddin Erbakan University, and Marmara University. He's published many articles, papers, and book reviews on Turkish modernization, political sociology, conservatism, and Islamism. He's currently on the faculty of Istanbul Madaniyat University in the Faculty or College of Literature in the Department of Sociology, and editor of the Journal of Human Society. He has many books, including Dictionary of Socialization, Political Socialization, Ali Izzet Begovic, Turkish Right, Essays in Politics and Sociology, Modernization in Turkey, Religion, Politics, and Social Change, Indigenous and Modern and Different Essays in Turkish Thought. He will be speaking to us on politics and government. Our second speaker is Dr. Ahmed Kurulu. Dr. Kurulu is currently an assistant professor at the Political Science Department at Istanbul University. He's a fellow at Compose, a faculty of Social Sciences in International Islamic University of Indonesia. He's also served as the head of the summer school program and teaching member at the Academic Studies Association or Ilmi Itudlar Derneyi, which is Ilm. He has published many articles, books, and opinion pieces on political liberalism in Turkey, reading Turkish thought, thorough periodicals, circulation of modern Turkish thought among Muslim societies after the Second World War, youth and politics in Turkey, and so on and so forth. He will speak to us about the state or the religion and the state. Our third speaker is Professor Dr. Nihat Urdumush. Dr. Urdumush graduated from Boğaziçi University in the Department of Psychology in 1992. He received his master's degree in organizational behavior from Istanbul University in 1995 and a PhD in 1998 in management and organization from Sakarya University. He became associate professor the following year and professor of management and organization in 2005. He served as advisor to the president of the Turkish Council for Higher Education between 2011 and 2014. He currently works in the Business Administration Department at Yıldız Technical University and is chairman of İlke Education's Board of Trustees, one of the outstanding public private institutions or waqf. He's authored many articles on career planning, higher education, NGOs, and he's the author of books of careers, theory and practice, voluntary and professional work in NGOs, development of second generation in family business, management of NGOs, training needs and analysis, and Dr. Urdumush will talk to us about higher education and status of research and development. Our final speaker is Dr. Nursam Keskin Aksay. Dr. Aksai received her PhD, which was titled The Discursive Emergence of Islamic Bourgeois and Middle-Class Veiled Muslim Women in Istanbul. She graduated with the highest honor degree from Berlin Graduate School, Muslim Cultures and Societies, Free Universität Political and Social Sciences Department, where she's been awarded the German Research Foundation and many other grants. She completed her double major bachelor from Boğaziçi University in Sociology and Philosophy, and her master's degree from Koç University in a dissertation or research thesis titled Moral Gradualism at the Intersection of the Household and the Workplace, Women Factory Workers in Denizli. Dr. Aksai has been very active in many research projects across many universities, but suffice it to say that since 2019, she's been an assistant professor at Ibn Khaldun University in the Department of Sociology. She completed many research projects with regard to Islamist women from the 60s to the present in the context of religion, social area and emotion, and social change, migration and beginning, and so on and so forth. She has, as I said, many publications in that area. She will be speaking to us on social policies and culture. Each speaker has about 25 minutes to present their, to give their presentation, and then we'll move into discussion. And we'll start with Dr. Akil.
Can I use that one? Okay. Thank you very much, Professor Sami. Today I'm going to present you a presentation about politics and governance in Republican Turkey. Especially, you know, our main subject is about AK Party era. I have a PowerPoint document here. I'm going to share it. Okay. Here, this is my point of view that politics and governance in Turkey based on a tradition from Seljuk and Ottoman empires. I actually underline the tradition of the state or governance, whatever we say. Here, I accept the historical reality also can be accepted as a sociological reality. And they are related each other. And also, we have to understand last 2 centuries of Turkey, which we call Turkish modernization process, was a huge social change. These 2 realities, historical reality and also the sociological reality, the sources of the general political culture, and we have to find out those changings like migrations, like wars, and political big change, great change. You know, we were live in Ottoman Empire more than 1 century in 19th century. After 20th century, it had been changed. Government, what I mean about political culture, government, political actors, institutions, organizations like parties and associations, ideologies, and citizens are shareholders and producers of the general political culture. Here we can follow the changings of those all elements that I wrote here. Turkish modernization is also regarded as a political process This is one of its main features because it was initiated under the leadership of the state. Not, it was not it was not based on a class or a middle class or a proletariat or bourgeois, something like that. The modernization is dominated by the state, so we can accept that process as a political process in itself. And also, this big changing process changed the political culture. During the 19th century, Turkish modernization led to the emergence of two situations. One of them is centralization of bureaucracy. The second one is cultural division of society. I mean, new elites. These elites is not just in economic sphere or political sphere, but both, especially the educated, secular educated, new secular educated elites of Turkey. The traditional masses. Here you can see the conflict, or the contrast. I mean the contrast, new elites and versus traditional masses. This is the cultural division of society, which I want to underline. This is also one of the main conclusion of this process. Here, second constitutional monarchy, you can see the histories in 1908 and 1918 between, which survived until the end of First World War, and Republic of Turkey. Both were founded by the new generation of Turkish modernization. Here, I want to emphasize the new generation, which was educated new generation of Turkish modernization. I mean the soldiers, the politicians, the intellectuals, which were a part of that cultural division that I said before. Commitment to positivism and progressivism was one of the most important characteristics of this generation, and we can follow during the Republican era how they became radical actors on Turkish modernization. These all historical and sociological changing process is very important for understanding the AK Party era, because it was based on this period. During the one-party period, here you can see the histories, 1925, from 1925 to 1945. It was also 20 years. Influences from the Jacobinism of the French Revolution can be traced. This is important because, you know, like us, all individuals, also societies have memories. This one-party period is one of the main affected thing to our social memory that we can follow still today. We can follow its effects still today. In this period, cultural distances due to cultural divisions widened and the groups became more tense. The intervention in the cultural sphere through social engineering has led to the buildup of tension among large masses of people. Here we can follow the integration of Republican People Party and also the state. They were together, they were one, they were one-sided. So I want to underline that concept, tension. Still, we are going to, elect we have an election on May, 2 months later, and we can still follow the all things, and we can interpret from that tension still as well. Decision to democratization after 1945, mainly 1946, this decision was taken under post-World War II conditions, and also the one-party period can be accepted, can be understood with the conditions of post-World War I. Here, all the international conditions are changed also in this geography. And multi-party life resumed in Turkey after that. So public tension and reaction to single-party era, the one-party period, brought the Democrat Party to power in the 1950 elections. Here we can see the opposite party of Republican People Party, Democrat Party. Its founders were also members of Republican People Party as well. But they resigned and they established that Democrat Party against the Republican People Party. And there had been 3 elections in 50s during 1950 to 1960. And this, here you can see the rates of Democrat Party, 55% in 1950, 58%. This is also still a record for Turkish political life. 58% in 1954 and 48% in 1957. Democrat Party period ended with a military coup in 1960. This was also about this cultural division between bureaucratic actors and also the other elected actors. There always had been a conflict between these groups in Turkish society, and this conflict affected Turkish political life. Here I wrote a sentence from Adnan Menderes. He is sentenced to die after that military coup in 1961. We came to power, but we couldn't be in power. This is very important. This sentence is very important because if we understand that, we can understand the reactions of the main political culture. We can understand the reactions of masses in Turkey, especially the conservative and Islamic who still live in a lifestyle with Islamic view. So this sentence is very important and refer to a lot of things in political history. In Turkish political history, coup regimes have generally failed to achieve what they wanted in 3 elections. This is another fact. You can see the parties which were supported by conservatives mainly, in 1965 and in 1969, Justice Party. The leader was Süleyman Demirel. Also he can get the support of religious communities in Turkey very much. After the 1980, you know, we lived another military coup in 1980. After the pre-elections in 1983 and 1987, military didn't want Turgut Özal to become prime minister and also presidency. Here you can see the Motherland Party. It was Turgut Özal's party. Conservatists and liberal related to Turkish political right. All of them, here I wrote three political parties: Justice Party, Motherland Party, and AK Party. All they can be related to the same tradition in Turkish political culture. 2002, 2007, to 2011, 2015, and 2018, you know, these elections, AK Party, conservative Democrats, they defined themselves like this, with this concept related to Turkish political rights also. They came from Milli Görüş era, and maybe some of you don't know, but Necmettin Erbakan was wanted to be a member in Justice Party before, but Süleyman Demirel blocked his candidate in Konya. Then after that, he joined the Turkish political life as independent, and then he founded some, you know, political parties: Milli Nizam, Milli Selamet, Welfare Party, Refah Partisi. But for Milli Görüş Party was closed and banned by the constitutional case. In 1950s, here we can follow the social chains, because these are very important to understand the last 20 years of, last 25, 21 years of our political life, which was dominated by AK Party. In 1950s, rural-urban migration and large-scale economic mobility began in Turkey. Rural-urban migration is very important here. As you know, we live in Istanbul today. Its population is more than 16 million, but in 1950s, it started under 1 million. Yeah. Between 1960 and 1980, migration continued, and political differentiation and also polarization, this is an important concept as well, became evident. Political right and left, they also polarize, and also they fight and with violence, unfortunately. After 1980, opening up to the outside with Özal world and rapid social change took place, demands for democratization, civil rights, civic rights, we can also say that, also voiced more strongly in 1980s and also in 1990s. But we can follow another thing. This was a part of, this was just a part of, a side of the cultural division. Here we can see the other part. In 1990s, can be defined as the years of political conflict of historical and socio-political cultural division, which went to, you know, 28 February coup, military coup. The rise of Milli Görüş movement is one of the most important reflections of this conflict, because state and bureaucratic actors didn't want Erbakan and Milli Görüş movement to gain power. They limited him, they limited that movement, political movement, and also they closed his biggest, it was the biggest party in Turkey. Also, they closed by the using constitutional case, power of constitutional case. The Welfare Party's victory in the metropolitan municipalities of Ankara and Istanbul had a major impact. This happened in 1994. You know, Recep Tayyip Erdogan had become the municipality mayor of Istanbul. Welfare Party became the first party in the elections in 1995. During the prime ministership of Necmettin Erbakan, there was another military coup in a different style. This coup named as postmodern coup because they used other tools. Soft. It was not soft for us who live in who was living in Turkey. No. Although in the February 28th COP was resistance of the bureaucratic elite, it was also one of the most important reasons for the AK Party's rise to power. They didn't want that. They didn't also expect that such a thing. But here, AK Party, you know, more than 20 years governed the Turkey. As the regime restricted religious freedoms with its unique interpretation of secularism, or we can choose another concept here, laicism, not secularism, laicism. It was an ideology of some part of Turkey. Here we can still follow them. They have not power, but maybe they can get again. It faced a huge public backlash in the elections in 2002. AK Party and Recep Tayyip Erdogan became the common choice of those who were considered the other in the cultural divide. Here we also use another terms, white Turkish and white Turks and black Turks. You know, Recep Tayyip Erdogan was the no, he was black. He was not from whites. The Constitutional Court's rejection of the laws. Here we can follow the first AK Party period. We are going to see, but I can say now, I categorized AK Party era in four periods. Four periods. We can understand in four periods. In the first period, the Constitutional Court's rejection of the laws which was made by AK Party government. Rejections always by 9 votes to 2. These two members of the Constitutional Court was appointed by Turgut Özal. They always decide, they join to AK Party's, you know, decisions. They join, but the other ones, the 9 members of the Constitutional Court, they were against the AK Party. Here you can see what law is. It's another maybe discussion. The presidential election in 2008, the military memorandum, this was not a COP, issued on the same day, and then in 2008, the closure case filed against the party, AK Party, over the headscarf liberalization are reflections of the historical and sociological tensions by the bureaucratic part of this government. During this period, we can see the reaction of people, masses, conservative masses, just not conservatives. Also, I can say in the first period, who selected AK Party? Conservatives, right-wing liberals, Islamists, Democrats, some of, not all, but some of left-wing liberals and social democrats also supported AK Party. You can see the rates, 2002, 34%. Then 5 years later, after that presidential election, it increased 47%. And then in 2011, 49. Okay, I'm going to finish now. You know, it was about 12 years ago. The 21-year AK Party period can be divided into 4 sub-periods. The first period, 2002 to 2008, was dominated by the discourses of democratization, inclusion in the European Union and human rights. In this period, even though the party came to power alone, it constantly faced bureaucratic obstacles. We can remember Adnan Menderes' words again. We just lived, an AK Party governors also lived that reality. The second period between 2008 and from 2008 to 2013, it is a transitional period between the imitation of the closure case against the party, the Gezi events, and December 17 and 25, which was FETÖ. Today we call it FETÖ, but at this time we call it parallel government, because they had so many spare to play in bureaucratic era during the AK Party period, in the first period and the second period. In this period, although the sphere of power in the state expanded, a serious tension also continued. The third period, between 2013 to 2016, is the period of statehood and transition to nationalist discourse. The July 15 coup attempt was a major break in the accumulated process. And here, what we live, the fourth period, is the alliance with the Nationalist Movement Party from 15th of July 2016 to the present. It is the period of adaptation of state discourse and reflexes in domestic politics. Mainly, I want to underline that. We live now that, but also we have to accept this. AK Party has now has been accepted as a power in state and governance now. These conditions don't look like the 20 years ago, the conditions of 20 years ago. So I can finish here, then maybe I can get the questions and we can interpret it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akin. I'm going to summarize very quickly. He says that politics and governance in Turkey really depends on 2 elements. One, it's based on the Seljuk and the Ottoman experiences, as well as sociological realities. He said that the government, the sources of political culture in Turkey is government, political actors and institutions, organizations are the stakeholders and that constitute the general political culture. He said the Turkish modernization experience was a political process that started in the 19th century, and it was based on the centralization of bureaucracy, or led to the centralization of bureaucracy and the cultural division within the country that produced new elites and the traditional masses. The second constitutional monarchy that took place is another period that is important, between 1908 and 1918, which preceded the founding of the Republic, but it founded also a new generation of Turkish modernization, not just within the political elites, but also soldiers, politicians, and the political elites. And that class was committed to positivism and progressivism, which were the characteristics of that generation. We have to understand these things because this historical narrative plays an important part in understanding the AK Party era. There was, after that, what he called as the one-party period between 1925 and 1945 for almost 20 years, that ended with the end of the Second World War, and this was had a lot of influences of the Jacobinson, of the French Revolution influence. During that period, the cultural distances, the cultural differences within the country even widened further, and there were much tension among the masses. He said during that time, in the one-party era, was the Republican era. But after that, there were several elections by which people, because of that history, they tended to vote for the alternative or the opposition. So the Democratic Party won in 1950, 55%, 54, 58%, 57, 48%. And as they were progressing towards that, there was always a pushback from the deep state or the powers to be with military coups. That happened to Adnan Menderes in 1960, in which he is quoted to say that we came to power, but we couldn't really be in power. Coups have failed to achieve what they want in free elections. They always come to roll back any changes that happen. That again happened with successive elections between 65 and 69 with the Justice Party. And then that brought in the 1971 coup, and then the Motherland Party came also. We also had the 1980 coup, and then the AK Party, and of course Turgut Özal was in the Motherland Party. And then we had the rise of Erbakan, and that brought in another coup, 1997. Of course, the AK Party won several elections, but we're in a different era, 2002, 7, 11, 15, and 18. You could see that there is a tendency, there is a trend with the opposition of what constitutes the deep state. Whenever there are free elections, they tend to win it. The 1950s also saw a rural-urban migration and large-scale economic mobility within the country. He gave an example of Istanbul going from 1 million in 1950 to about more than 16 million today. There was a lot of migration and political polarization within that period, and particularly after the 1980. In the 90s, the years of political conflict started, of historical and sociological and cultural division, with the rise also of the Milli Gurush movement and the victory of the Istanbul and Ankara municipalities to this political trend, which gave rise to Erdogan in 1994. The Welfare Party won 1995. That brought in another military coup in 97, what he called postmodern coup, which was that coup was also a catalyst in bringing the AK Party to power, or its rise to power. And part of it also is the restrictions on religion, which he called laichism, rather than secularism. At any rate, the country was polarized in what he called as white Turks, black Turks type of thing, which is the cultural divide. The AK Party, in his last part of his speech, he looked into the AK Party rule as distinctively 4 different periods. The first one was between 2002 and 2008, and was characterized by democratization and inclusion in the European Union and human rights. And it did face a lot of bureaucratic pushback. The second period, that was between 2008 2013, what he called as transitional period, and that included the initiation of the closure of the party by the in courts, the Gezi Park protests, and the December 1725 by the FETO or by the parallel structure. The third period between 2013 2016 was the statehood transition, and it had distinctively a nationalist discourse. And we can also date the fourth period, which started after the July 15, 2016 coup with the alliance with MHP that still is today. And it adopted a state discourse and reflexes. The AK Party has been now in control of 21 years in power, which has impacted and affected certainly state institutions. Thank you very much.
Just a picture. Okay.
There is one picture he will show us.
Was this picture?
Yes.
This picture was used in 2007 elections in AK Party's campaign, and also the other elections. Maybe it can still can use today. Maybe you can ask, where is Erbakan? At that time, Erbakan was a leader of a party which was in opposition
to Erdogan.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. It does say a lot. Our next speaker is Dr. Ahmed Kurulu, and his topic is going to be religion and the state. Dr. Ahmed, 25 minutes.
Okay. Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes. We can hear you. We can.
Thank you for having me for this wonderful symposium and organization, Professor Aryan and the organizing committee. This is a very important symposium, includes many vital topics, discussions, especially just before the very, very important election in Turkey in less than 2 months. I followed morning session on YouTube, and there were good presentations and debates. Some participants also asked the questions and contribute with some, comments and reviews about religion and some issues related to politics, secularization, religion in Turkey. And inshallah, my presentation particularly covers these historical and important issues in Turkish politics and Turkey. Just beginning historical background, and in the 19th and 20th century, the secularization policies implemented by Muslim states such as Turkey, Egypt, Iran, Pakistan, or some others brought about conflicts and some differences and problematic areas between the states and the religion, Islam especially. Also in Turkey, the modernization and secularization process is very complicated and difficult process to understand it. When we look at the historical background, as you know, although the need to change the role of religion in the state mechanisms in Turkey had manifested itself in different policies, more theoretically and concretely, it was first formalized in the 1839 in the Gülhane Edict. Among other things, the Gülhane Edict is very important and as a written expression of modernization and includes several articles on the civil rights of non-Muslim subjects of the empire. In the following years, tracing a European model at that time, new educational reform programs was also legislated in Ottoman Empire with the aim of opening a variety of schools for bureaucratic functions and the military personnel, in addition to the traditional Islamic schools and madrasas. Essentially, all these changes were an indication that Islamic law and institutions no longer functioned adequately to deal with the problems faced by the 19th century Ottoman administration. In this new situation, there was a need to reinterpret the basic principle of Islamic law or Sharia. As a result of very good coordinated efforts, partially completed drafts were published under the title of Mecelle. The first, we can say, the first example of a revolution or reform in Islamic law at that time. The modernization program in the Ottoman era at that time called Westernization or Europeanization and was continued at a faster pace in the Republic of Turkey as well. A radical secularization program initiated by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk, and he first abolished the Sultanate 1922 and then the Caliphate 1924. All these reforms were followed by others, similar others, such as the abandonment of the Arabic alphabet and the adoption of the Latin alphabet in 1928, or the banning of traditional dresses, or we can say Islamic dresses, or the shutdown of madrasas, the Sufi lodges and orders, as well as Sharia course in 1925. And also we can add the introduction of the new civil code in 1926. These and many other related reforms are today referred to simply as in Turkish politics or in Turkish modern Turkish history, Atatürk reforms. And also the other important point is in the 1924 constitution, this is the first constitution of the modern Turkish Republic, Islam was recognized as the official religion of the Republic, but 4 years later, this article was removed from the constitution and, as you know, later replaced by the phrase Turkey is not Islamic country, Turkey is a secular country in 1937. This secularization policies initiated by Mustafa Kemal Atatürk were continued at full speed by his successor İsmet İnönü after Atatürk's death in 1938 until the newly established which is one party government at that period until 1950. Until the newly established Democrat Party came to power in 1950, the one-party regime of the Republican People's Party was able to maintain control over all forms of religious activity before the Democratic Party or one-party rule control all forms of religious activity at that time. The Democrat Party government, whose electoral victory was based on the votes of the discontent masses or populations, relaxed the control over the religious activities of intellectuals and even illegal religious groups. During this period, as a need of the Turkish nation and as part of secularization policies, like the call to prayer, ezan, which had been mandated to be recited in Turkish by previous governments at Atatürk and İsmet İnönü rules, was for the first time recited in Arabic instead of Turkish the Democrat Party era. Only after such events after the change of power in 1950, maybe we can speak of dialogue based on compromise between religion and the state. Also, despite some limitation, not all fully free to speak and to implement. This date, 1950s, still recognized as the beginning of religious freedoms in Turkey. Despite the abandonment of strict regulations on the activities of religious groups and the lifting of bans or religious publications, it remains unclear whether Islam as a binding identity has reached a lasting consensus between the Muslim populations or Muslim masses and the state. It's not clear yet at that era still. This situation has continued to maintain its importance as an important era of debate in religion-state relations in Turkey until today. As an important date, 1980 coup, the relations between religion and the state entered a new phase in Turkey. The 1980 coup is very important at this point. And the issues followed new agendas and new lines through, like, İmam Hatip schools or Diyanet or some, other religious or religious official, structures or institutions. And when we come in 1990s, the tension in religion-state relations reach its peak. The regime debates that emerged on religious grounds led to a number of controversial policies in 1990s especially. And there was another postmodern coup, called so-called postmodern coup, and some other important political issues at that time. And in the 2000s, with the AK Party government, religion and the relations between state and the religion in Turkey were dragged into a new channel and tried to be balanced again. And this is the kind of historically the history of the relations between religion and politics in Turkey. After this a quick background, maybe we can move on the following critical questions. Has the state secularization program in Turkey, which has been implemented for more than a century, maybe more than a century, as part of the modernization project, achieved its goal or its aim in Turkey? Of course, it will not be easy to answer this question with a quick answer, yes or no. Yes, it is achieved, or not. Because there are many arguments supporting the thesis that the secularization policies of not only in Turkey, but also in the Muslim countries such as Egypt, Pakistan, or some North African countries at that time. This conviction is reinforced today by the fact that Islam, in the form of political parties or Islamic movements, protest movements, is undergoing a renewed and sustained revival, expanding its sphere of influence. The reasons for the failure of modernization projects can, of course, be analyzed from different perspectives. For instance, let me give some important and mainstream approaches to focus on these relations, state and religion. For example, referring to Max Weber's doctrine, argued that modernization happened only in Western Europe as a result of the highest peak of hypothetical field, and it is not a phenomenon that other cultures can necessarily emulate this modernization process. Also, another of Weber analysis is articulated by Brian Turner. According to Turner, the historical specificity of Europe is summarized by Weber using the concept of rationalization and rationality. And rationality was posited as the increase of systematic control and covering all aspects of human life on the basis of principles and general rules that prevented the acceptance of charismatic authority or traditional norms, and these refers mostly, as you know, to some, Islamic governments or rule, or some, Muslim rules, the traditional norms or authorities. Along with Weber's this famous theory of secularism as a social product of Protestantism and capitalism, another approach is Ernst Gellner's views on Islam, also important in this context. Views on Islam also important in this context. According to Gellner, Islam is a religion that has always carried within itself a certain element of reform and revelation, but it also contained within itself an essence that has protected it throughout history from the great change that followed. This approach brings with it an explanation that allows for the possibility that the Islamic world countries, or like Turkey, do not have to ignore religion while modernizing, and that this can happen together with the religion. However, an important question that needs to be answered and clarified here is the position of religion and the level of religion's influence as a sense in Turkey or in any other Muslim country. In the search for the reasons underlying the problematic course of secularization and modernization projects in modern Muslim states, some scholars emphasize some of the distinctive features of the Islamic governments that emerge in these countries, such as totalitarianism or patrimonialism. On the other hand, they underline that the secularization of traditional institutions has been implemented through official decrees and strict regulations without any prior effort to enlighten the public. And in the final analysis, such an imposed understanding of secularism and secularization is nothing more than an anti-religious secular ideology rather than a distinguishing principle between religion and the state. As a matter of fact, the distinction between French type secularism and British type secularism, which we often face or encounter in discussions on secularism debates in Turkey, can be read as an extension of this approach or this perspective. And according to this approach, especially regarding to debates about Turkish politics, the point of religious positions, the French type of secularism, as it practiced in Turkey, does not allow the state to be neutral or an arbiter of religion. But on the contrary, this kind of secularism allows it to turn into a structure that acts as an anti-religious institutions. Maybe you are familiar with this discussion in Turkey. In Turkey is very common, the French type secularization or British type secularization. Another approach to the issue is the claim that modernization does not necessarily lead to secularization. This is also a very important approach. Prominence of this view refer to the fact that secularization was a product of the conflict between the state and the church in Western Europe, and emphasize that a similar situation is not observed in the any part of Muslim world. According to them, Islam does not prevent believers, its believers from adopting a secular perspective on matters that have nothing to do with religion. For this reason, secularization strategies implemented in Muslim countries are perceived by Muslim societies as a set of aligned values imposed on them by force without the consent of the people. Also, according to also these proponents, this is the main reason why these strategies have failed in the Muslim countries. Having the opportunity to briefly examine the different perspectives advocated by different sides on the problems of secularization in Muslim states, we can maybe now better analyze the nature of this conflict between the state and the religion, of which the secularization of the old institutions inherited from the Ottoman period, especially, and formed an integral part, and which emerged implementation of the Westernization movement in Turkey. In this way, maybe we are also able to recognize the need for a specific approach that can lead us to different conclusions than those expressed above, or just mentioned explanations or approaches is applicable to the Turkish case, and which is not good or suited for the in Turkish case. At this point, first of all, unlike one of the main important issue that unlike the developments in some other Muslim states, such like Egypt, Pakistan, or Iran, maybe we can say that the secularization policies in religion-state relations in Turkey have been partially successful, because in Turkey, in addition to state institutions such as military, bureaucratic, and educational systems, most of which are secular, a considerable proportion of educated people have a secular mentality and have internalized these secular ideas, although not in a fully European way. They may still, these people are still identify themselves as a Muslims, but they do not resemble traditional Muslims who are conscious practitioners of Islamic rituals, nor do they advocate the application of Islamic rules in everyday life. Instead, these people, or these mass of educated people, just as a European citizen might do, like trace religion as a matter of private choice, or avoids as much as possible any intellectual debate that might lead to a satisfactory answer to whether their actions in daily life are compatible with Islamic rules. Thus, this point is important. Islamic movements or politics or any kind of policies in Turkey are not only confronted with the secular state mentality or institutions, but also with a group of these secular-minded people, Turkish people, who are opposed to Islamic-style governments that apply Islamic rulings and reject the bond of citizenship with fundamental rights and freedoms. Popular support for secular values in Turkey is apparently still much greater than in other Muslim countries, I think. And at first glance, this seems to be a development in favor of secularism in Turkey. But of course, this is not only the case. On the other hand, it also draws attention to and strengthens the modern aspects of religious and Islamic interpretation of Turkey. And it also strengthens the modern aspect of Turkey's positive relation with the Western world within the among the Muslim states, Muslim countries, which makes it an example for the other Islamic countries. On the other hand, there is another aspect of the religion-state relationship in Turkey that should be noted in favor of religion. Islam has remained for a long time without radical internal change and has been the only prominent force in all Muslim cultures, in all Muslim countries, embracing almost all elements that offer a holistic worldview, leaving no room for any other foreign, issues or foreign elements to penetrate the minds of Muslim believers. I mean, Islam is a self-sufficient way of life that provides answers to all the metaphysical questions that people can ask within their own faith. So it naturally provides the conditions for the possibility of mental peace of mind for Muslims, for the believers. The fact that Islam has an essence that prevents it from undergoing radical change when confronted with unfamiliar situations, as we have already noted by Gellner's expressions about the Islamism have their own essence. But what this essence is, of course, is not clear and needs a separate and some detailed analysis.
Rahman, can you wrap up in 2 minutes?
Okay. Since Islam is the only criterion for establishing legal legitimacy in the Muslim world, whether scientific or social, must have religious approval. Every individual and social action is subject to religious survey. This situation represents a very strong area that also applies to Turkey. Throughout the Republic in modern Turkey, attempts to confine religion to the private sphere or private area and to remove it from the public sphere were largely unsuccessful. When we look at the modern Turkish history, this is not possible. And it found a place, the stage with its former vitality and strength in the first area where it found an opportunity. This is a situation related to both the intrinsic value of religion that has preserved itself in the modern period, as mentioned before, and the special meaning and the importance attached to Islam in Turkey. Therefore, maybe it would be meaningful to strongly emphasize the following, as Ismail Kara, Professor Ismail Kara, has also stated, although a secular and even anti-religious attitude has been expressed by some policymakers in Turkey, and some policies have been put into practice in Turkey, but no policymaker or no politics has ever been able to say that the state or the Turkish state has no religion. This is a very important point. And the conclusion, the fact that these two different perspectives can dominate Turkey at the same time and together leads us to Turkey's uniqueness in the politics. With all these discussions, it is good to ask the questions in a provocative way as follows. Is Turkey a secular, non-religious state, or is Turkey is Muslim state as politically, or Islamic state as politically? Yes, of course, I know that in this sentence that many concepts are ambiguous, even in this sentence, but I think the meaning is clear what I mean to using these words. We can ask the questions in different level also. Does, for example, does Islam occupy a central place in Turkish politics, despite all these, troubles or problems, or has it been pushed to a neglected place, not important in the Turkish politics? As difficult as the questions are, it doesn't seem that easy to answer these questions very easily. In my opinion, the trajectory of the relationship between the religion and the state in Turkey over last century, or even before maybe 1980s, the main characteristic that currently exhibits points to a unique and special institution in Turkey. In Turkey, as in many other areas, religion is an indispensable element for state and politics. And politics in Turkey cannot move forward by ignoring Islam, whether viewed from the opposing or the agreeing side point of view. The 100th anniversary of the modern Republic Turkey has many rich examples of this in terms of its politics. On the other hand, one of the important reasons why Turkey has a special place among Muslim countries is due to its relations with the West and Western world, and it is unique characteristic in its modernization experience. I think Turkey is not only a country geographically or geopolitically at the crossroads of the West and the East, or a country that serves as a bridge between the East and West side. Also, nor Turkey's European Union membership process as a Muslim country, material policy tool that is taken as an example by other Islamic countries and Muslim societies. Nevertheless, this interesting relationship between the state and the religion in Turkey, which has been experienced for last century, it also taken as an example and attracts attention as a roadmap and vision. And as a conclusion, in my opinion, the advantage and disadvantage of this structure and process that has developed between religion and state in Turkey will preserve its special status for many years to come, and will be decisive in the relationship between religion and the state in Turkey. Thank you so much for listening. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Dr. Kuroglu. Dr. Kuroglu spoke about the secularization policies in the 20th century, which was taking place across the Muslim world, not only in Turkey, but also in Egypt, Tunisia, other places, as part of the modernization and secularization process, was, he said, formalized in 1839 with the Gulhane Edict, which started addressing the question of civil rights of non-Muslim subjects, but of course pretty quickly went into educational reforms throughout the 19th century, impacting traditional schools and madrasas. This process or this program also called for closer Europeanization of Turkey and a radical secularization program that was later pushed by Mustafa Kemal as he changed the alphabet. He changed many of the traditional things like dress and adhan and so on and so forth. The Ataturk, or what they called Ataturk reforms, stayed aggressively throughout Turkey, where much of Islamic symbols and ideology went from the public life, and they were instituted even in the constitution. While Islam initially was recognized as the official religion, it was later taken out from the constitution in 1937, which declared Turkey to be a secular state. After his death, his successor Ismet İnönü also pushed through that until the 1950 elections, which brought another political party that was trying to ease up on the attack on religion, and we know that ended up with a coup. This process back and forth was taking place even after the 1980 coup. The relation between state and religion perhaps has taken a new phase, but that tension also reached its peak between the forces who were pushing back against the involvement of religion in the public space, and officially we saw that in the postmodern coup of 1997. However, under the AK party, that relationship started to become more balanced, as he put it. And he asked the question, has the modernization project reached its objectives? He started to give certain quotations from different scholars to address that point. And basically he said that the secularization as a social product of Protestantism and capitalism in the context of obviously Islam replacing that. He talked about two types of secularism, what he termed as the French and the British rather than American, I guess. French, which is more associated with laicism or more negative view of religion, while the other secularism is probably trying to champion itself as trying to save religion from the state. Either way, the modernization, his view said modernization does not necessarily lead to secularization, while the secularization strategies failed in many Muslim countries, due in part that the Muslim world or the people did not accept this process. Some thought that it was linked to foreign intervention and foreign plots. Secularization policies in Turkey have partially been successful. There are a considerable number of elites and institutions that are totally secular today in both thought and practice, and they don't really resemble Muslim traditional lifestyle. The popular support for secular thought is still strong and large. It's larger, much larger in Turkey than it is in other Muslim countries. He also talks about Islam being able to provide a worldview that naturally answers many of life complicated questions, which gives Islam some sort of legitimacy in the public space. He said now politicians are trying to adapt to this, and they may not take as much of a negative attitude as it used to be in the past. Does Islam occupy a central place in Turkish politics? It's not an easy question to answer. The relationship between state and religion is an indispensable element now in politics. He said we reached the 100th-year anniversary of Turkey in the Republic of Turkey, the modern Republic of Turkey, after this push of secularization. It has unique characteristics And certainly, Turkey is not just a crossroad between East and West in geography, but certainly in this debate. Thank you so much, Dr. Kurulu. Now we have our third speaker, Dr. Nihat Urdumush, and he will talk about the status of higher education and research and development. Dr.
Okay, thank you, Sami Aryan, and also thank you to organizing committee of the symposium. Let's move on my presentation. Okay, we talk about politics, sociology, but my presentation will be a bit different, and I focus more narrow area, higher education and research in Turkey, especially last decade. I take into account this outline of my presentation. I'll give short history of higher education in Turkey. Main points I'll touch here. Then I'll show you some basic indicators change from 2003 to 2022, last decade in Turkey. We witnessed a huge expansion during this time. And also, I'll detail some parts of expansion in Turkey, like access to participation, number of increase in academic staff, education environment, and also financing of higher education. I'll talk about in the second part. Then I will examine status of research and development in Turkey regarding publications, patents, human resource in research and development area, research funds, and also research universities last established or founded in Turkey. And we give importance. At the end of the presentation, in a short way, I'll talk about quality and accreditation studies in Turkey. And at the end of the presentation, new challenge Turkish higher education system faced last years, I'll try to explain, and some conclusions I'll do at the end of the presentation. This is the framework of my presentation. As you know, university as an institution has a long history and also deep tradition. It was shaped by notion of curiosity, research, knowledge, criticism, autonomy, and responsibility. These are characteristics of a university as an institution. Lastly, we witnessed very important political, social, economic, technological, environment, legal change in these days. These developments affected higher education deeply all over the world and also in Turkey. Regarding this change, Turkey witnessed some problems, some challenge. One is imbalance between supply and demand of higher education. There is a young generation, they want to go on university, but there is imbalance between supply and demand. We should take into account for Turkey. Also, higher education system has expanded in numbers of students and also numbers of academic staff, and also students access to higher education enrollment rates consistently. They increased, a huge increase we can talk about. And also, Turkey followed an aggressive growth strategy in higher education after 2005. And there's a big expansion in terms of magnitude and also geography of Turkey. All cities, we have universities after this time. Also, this rapid expansion started some debates, some criticism about quality of the higher education in Turkey. Okay, rapid expansion in quantity is okay, but there are some problems regarding quality of education and research. Some shareholders discussed and criticized. But we see some criticism not based on data, some criticism based on perception of those people, those shareholders, and also some speculations about higher education. And lastly, we talk now, okay, quantity increased, but now the time of quality of higher education in Turkey, that's critical. In this presentation, I'll try to explain some quantitative change in Turkish higher education and some problems, some challenge Turkish higher education face now. This is the focus of my presentation. A short history of higher education in Turkey, not some detail. Historical roots of higher education date back to Sahni Sevan, founded by Mehmet the Conqueror. Then we talk about Darül Fünun in the mid of 18th century. Then Darülfünun was closed by the law of 252 in 1933. This is a very important date. Also, modern university was established in Turkey. It's assumed. Then, in 1946, second regulation and law is very important. The number of law is 4,936. Then next law, the subject of the law is constitution regulation. The university or higher education became a subject of constitution. And also in the middle of the 1970s, the idea of Council of Higher Education comes into mind, but not applied because of some resistance. And after military coup of the 80s in Turkey, Council of Higher Education (YÖK) was formed. That has an important impact on Turkish higher education system, a centralized one and a powerful central organization regulated higher education system in Turkey and discussed very much. The early universities of Turkey, you can see the founding years of them. If we look at the picture, we see geographical distribution of universities in Turkey. It started in Istanbul, Istanbul University, Istanbul Teknik University, then Ankara, then Izmir, big cities of Turkey, then other parts of central parts of the Turkey, different regions, universities founded. Second growth or second wave started after 1992 during the presidency of Turgut Özal. He was president, second wave, and third wave started or we witnessed during AK Party period. A huge expansion of third wave we witnessed in the middle of 2000 during the AK Party in power. YÖK or Council of Higher Education, we must talk about a bit. The position of YÖK is very important for Turkish higher education. In 1981, it was founded and the law 2547, we learn by heart, all Turkish academics. This is very important. Restructured academic world, institutions, and also administrative aspect of higher education system, a very authoritative and centralized system we are talking about when we say YÖK. With this law, all higher education institutions in Turkey have gathered under the umbrella of Council of Higher Education. That's an umbrella or roof organization. Then Council of Higher Education became responsible for all higher education institutions, and duties are given to it with the article 130 and 131 in Constitution. That gives very high power to YÖK or Council of Higher Education. That's very important. It has power because of the Constitution. And Higher Education Council responsible for planning, coordinating, and controlling the system, higher education system in Turkey. Again, higher education system is as a president-centered system. Okay, it's a council, but the president of the council has high power and shape the system very much. Then, lastly, I can talk about higher education institution face regulatory problems, structural problems, and limitations. Also, in Turkish higher education system, there is a hierarchical organization culture. That's also a problem for the system and also for the universities. Before the 2000s, political environment, let me describe in a short way. My friends touched a bit, but regarding higher education, I want to emphasize some critical points here. In the aftermath of the 1997 postmodern military intervention, 28 Şubat, we called it, the Board of Higher Education banned the headscarf on university campuses, and also the Board of Higher Education changed the regulations for the university entrance exam. That was a problem for Imam Hatip graduates. These two are very important problem during that years. Most of the people will not continue higher education institutions, although they have high points when we compare with other students. That's problem. The universities strictly enforce the ban, and many women students lost their basic right of pursuing a university degree. This ban was ended. This ban was enforced until 2008. First years in power, AK Party had a university reform program, but could not enforce the program because of the opposition and resistance of the Board of Higher Education Council or administrations or some universities, some rectors and some political parties like CHP, Cumhuriyet Halk Partisi. AK Party government decisively expanded higher education. The new Board of Higher Education administrators focus on broadening access and academic freedom since 2007. They removed a number of barriers to access to university education. After 2010, there are some higher education reform attempts. Interestingly, these attempts started by presence of Council of Higher Education, not AK Party itself. AK Party mainly focused more changing board members in higher education and rectors, not structure. I want to show some indicators. These are very critical to understand the change Turkey experienced during the last decade. You see here number of higher education institutions from 78 to 2008, about 3 times increased. Number of students from 1 million, about 2 million, close to 2 million, but now it has more than 8 million students in Turkey. Open education is included here. Number of students, if we exclude open and distance education, close to 4 million now. And number of students in open university, more than 4 million. When we compare the share of open education between these two terms, it's changed from 30% to 54%. And in Turkish higher education system, open university or open education has an impact. It shows us. Number of international students increased very much, about 15,000 to more than 2,000. Now, last number, it's about 300,000. A huge increase. Gross participation ratio in higher education increased very much. You see here, 112% now. Net participation, what I mean by net participation, the students between age of 18 and 22, the rate is 44%. Again, we see a huge increase. When we compare these numbers with OECD countries, these are very close to them. In some countries, we are above them. Number of academic staff again increased, and 180,000 in general, we have academic staff. Some of them with PhD, you see here, some of not PhD, but about 100,000 academic staff we have with PhD in Turkey. These are huge numbers. Student per academic staff, you see here again, this is negative change because of the quality of education, more than 10. Again, student per academic staff with PhD, it's about 40. Again, this change is negative, and this affect quality of education. That's a problem for us. Next number is candidates applying for the university exam. More than 3 million students, graduates from high school, high school, apply for university exam, but 1 million only enrolled to the system. We can discuss part of this enrollment, but the number of applicants and the number of enrolled students, if we look at here, demand and supply and demand imbalance is seen here. And the number of students graduating from universities in Turkish higher education system, more than 1 million, that show us employment problem for university graduates. These are indicators show us the change from 2003 to 2022, about 20 years AK Party ruled Turkey. Okay. Some details, let me briefly show you. Application and enrollment, this is the trend you see here. And also the first one is application, the second one is enrollment. These are numbers and you can see the trends year by year. Last year increased more because the level or the threshold level of the being a university entrance decreased. Therefore, number of applicants increased very much here. Enrollment rate I talked about increased very much again. When we compare 20 years, you see the increase in numbers. Student numbers in detail here. I said more than 8 million students in Turkey. This number is more than population of most of the countries in Europe and all over the world. I think I remember why I was advisor to President of Higher Education Council. More than 100 country population. We have students more than 100 countries population. That's a huge number. But within this number, we must take into account open education. That's very important. No. Now current students. Yes, in higher education system. Yes, 208 universities. The number of students in a university high in Turkey. Number of institutions are very not so high, 200 like Turkey, but number of students is very high, as you see here. The second one is undergraduates. Okay, let's see the numbers. Okay. The second, okay, I can see that. The second one, bachelor's degree. Third one is undergraduate students. Then master and last one, doctorate. We have doctorate students about more than 100,000. International students, now current numbers show us we have 300,000 international students in Turkey. If we compare two terms, the increase in comparable, very high increase we observe here. But the campus environment or other facilities for international students, we must discuss a bit. Academic staff again increased very close to 200,000 academic staff in Turkey. But the students per academics, we have high numbers when we compare OECD countries. That's our, this is the problem we should discuss in terms of quality. These are number of academic staff in academic fields. This is the highest one. They are in health and welfare field. In Turkey, there are lots of medicine faculty. They have lots of academics. Students per academics in health is very low. Therefore, the number of academics in health is very high. But in some fields, the number of academics is very low, although students number is very high. You can see here no. For example, this is for example, the highest number of students in Turkey as a field, business, law, and business and law, but the number of academic staff in that field about 16,000. When we compare health in the field, there are lots of academics, but less students in business and law field. We examine less academic staff and lots of students in that field. Number of students per academic. The first one is with PhD, about 50. But without PhD, we have students per academic about 30. This is general numbers. When we look at education field and social geography, these numbers will differentiate very much. Not equality, unfair distribution we can see when we look at region and some academic fields. This shows us numbers in academic fields. This is the green one. This highest point is business, management, and law. Most of students in this field. The second one is, I think, not easy. Okay. Regarding undergraduate studies, the highest one is business, management, and law. For associate degree, the highest one is again business, management, and law. When we look at health and welfare for undergraduate students, number of them is low, but the number of staff different, and there is unfair distribution regarding some fields you can see here. Again, unfair distribution of student per academics in different fields you see here. Again, the highest one is business, management, and law. The lowest one is you see here health and welfare. These are unfair distribution of academic staff and student numbers. What about the budget of higher education in Turkey? 57 billion Turkish lira we have higher education budget. Increased very much, increased year by year, but not enough for the Turkish higher education system because of the number and because of the expansion of the system. We must emphasize here. Ratio of the budget in GDP and central management budget, if we compare for the central management budget, the ratio is decreasing. Again, for the GDP, not so, the same level is continue. If we look at the budget of the higher education regarding GDP, the same level continue for 20 years. Expenditure for per student in Turkish lira it increases, but for regarding US dollar it decreasing. Expenditure for each student decrease regarding higher education because of the expansion of the higher education. Yeah. Yes. This is the beginning of the period. This is the last. Last year, after the expansion of the higher education, the expenditure for each student decreased. We see here. Scientific publication increased about 50,000. We have scientific publication regarding WOS, Web of Science. The place of Turkey in publications regarding other countries. When we, here, this is Scopus data. Turkey, 17th country in the world. When we compare China and Turkey, there is huge difference between China and Turkey, USA and Turkey. But we are 70th order in publication regarding all over the world. If you look at patents, again, we have about 7,000 patents in Turkey, but if we compare again the developed economies like China is not developed economy, like China, USA, Japan, or Germany or South Korea, we have difference again. We increased number of patents in Turkish context, but when we compare with the world, the numbers are low. We should increase. I want to emphasize the human resources in research and development area, more 220,000 about we have human resource in this field. Most of them employed in private industry. I cannot change this one. Therefore, I cannot see the. Okay. The private industry is the highest one. Second, the university, and thirdly, public institutions employ human resources in research and development area. Nation supports mainly TÜBİTAK scientific. TÜBİTAK support most of the research in Turkey. Most of the fundings come from TÜBİTAK. Also, there are some private industry and public organizations, but TÜBİTAK is very critical for the supporting scientific research. National and international support, some programs it has. Here we can see the numbers. The 1001 research project is very important in Turkey, and most of the rectors take into account seriously, and they calculate how many projects they have. The most important one is this one. Also, other type of support programs TÜBİTAK has. For example, career program for young scholars, or some excellence centers, or some areas, priority areas, etc. This kind of support mechanism TÜBİTAK developed and support Turkish higher education research and development area. Before 5 years ago, we as founded research universities, mission-based universities discussed very much, and then we decided to found research universities. There are 20 research universities, public research universities we have. At the beginning, there is no list. We started with 10, then we extended 20. Higher Education Council classified them top performers, research universities like METÜ, Middle East Technical University, Istanbul Technical University, and Boğaziçi University. They are called as top performers. According to me, they are not top performers when we compare with the world. But in Turkey, they are top. Definition not right for me, I think, because we have no university within 500. Therefore, if we say top, it must be 100 or 200. But they classified as top performance. Second group is high performance. Here, some institute like İzmir High Technology Institute, or some all universities as founded before 1980s, they have high performance regarding this classification, and also moderate level performance. Again, these universities are old universities. When we look at research universities, most of them established before 1980s, and also Gebze and İzmir Technology and institutes are a bit different. They are special institutions, focused more research. Also, they added at the beginning, there was no foundation university, but Council of Higher Education added foundation universities also as research university to the list. Bilkent University, Sabancı University, and Koç University included for this list. I think they deserve to be named as research university. I think research universities are very important concept for Turkey. They are very important, but we should discuss whether to develop the current one or establish new ones. That's a good discussion, because in some numbers are very high and you cannot transform that capacity for the research. But they named they look at inputs and capacity, not regarding performance. I think capacity for the number of students or year of the foundation year of the universities. The critical thing is here I want to emphasize. Some of them deserve research university and can compete with the world. That's true. But also in Turkey, we must found new universities based on research beginning, not transforming old ones, according to me. Okay, these there are some aims of research universities. That's very clear. I will not go on in detail. But we give importance research universities. All rectors wants to be focus more to be research university. They always encourage academic staff to increase publication or projects, but they don't look at process and they don't look at capacity. Always numbers, always outputs. That's problem according to me. We should focus more capacity of these universities. We should restructure these universities regarding their academic staff, their performance, and also some funding for these universities we need to increase. For the quality and the accreditation of the higher education system, we can talk about Bologna process. That's very important for Turkey. About 2000, from the beginning of 2000, about 10 years, we focus very much for Bologna reforms. Also, then we try to establish a quality organization, but not the first one was successful. But lastly, 2017, we established Higher Education Quality Board, YOKAK we named in Turkish. That was a good step for the quality of higher education in Turkey. And now they institution accreditation and also program accreditation they follow. They allow or permit some institutions to accredit programs in Turkey. Last year, institution accreditation is very important step, as I said earlier, but it becomes a bit mechanical. That's problem according to me. The content of the accreditation and content and quality of the programs or institutions is very important. But also it provides some quality increase. But form becomes more important than content. That's problem according to me. My time, I finished. 1 minute, okay. Let me summarize higher education system in Turkey and some challenge. There is still unmet demand for higher education. We know the candidates or applicants, the number of applicants, more than 3 million in Turkey. That's a huge number. Only 1 million they enroll in higher education institution. In those institutions, we can discuss also their quality. Harmony between expansion of higher education and the demands of the labor market. Okay, expectation of the labor market and also expansion. There is no imbalance we can talk about between these two. We have a shortage of skilled manpower in critical fields, but in some fields, oversupply we have, like business or like education. That's a challenge for Turkish higher education system. Also unfair distribution of academic staff in academic fields and also geography of Turkey. That's problem. Providing education and learning environment that compatible with new normals. We should transform learning environment to the digital world, appropriate for digital world and also new generation. The funds provided to higher education in Turkey has been increased. That's true. Government, government supported very much, funded very much. That's true. But still, the funding level is lower than OECD That's the point I want to emphasize. But Akbar support very much. That's clear. We need to increase capacity for research and I cannot speak. Knowledge production. Okay, that's the need. If we increase the order of economy, we had the aim within 10 economy. AK Party at the beginning of the early years, but to become in 10 economy, we should increase research and also knowledge production and also performance of the universities. Also, we need to increase international mobility and international students, and also the environment and facilities for international students. We should increase the environment and facilities for international students. Numbers increase very much. As I said earlier, 300,000 international students we have. That's a good number. Lastly, higher education system in Turkey has the necessity and urgency for managing change with a holistic vision and strategic approach. That's critical. Second one, higher education institutions must be organized on the basis of diversity. One type university still continue. There may be small difference, but we need diversity in higher education system and universities. That's very critical. The diversity can meet the demands of research and knowledge production and also professional skills and also employment demands. In the organization of higher education institutions, broad institutional autonomy should be given. We have autonomy problem in higher education system. And also institutions should be able to make strategic preferences by defining their priorities. And in this system, higher education institutions should create accountable and transparent structures, and focus should be placed on output control rather than input control. We focus more input control. Higher education institutions themselves must be able to achieve planned change through their inner dynamics by considering macro developments and change in the field of higher education system. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Nihat. Dr. Nihat spoke about higher education and research and development. He gave a short history about the expansion of higher education in Turkey. He said there were imbalance of supply and demand for a long time, and there was an aggressive policy of growth in the higher education after 2005. He started also by giving it history, that the history of higher education started with Muhammad Fatih, and then in the modern era, it came through waves. Between 1933 to 1982 was the first wave of public university. The second came in 92, and the third came in 2006. And he said that the higher education system is very authoritative and centralized system in Turkey, hierarchical in nature, and it is impacted by the political environment. For a long time before the AK party took over, there was a banning on the headscarves and changing also regulations, which impacted those who graduated from the Imam Khatib school. And there was a ban. That ban ended even 2008, 6 years within the AK party rule. And even the AK party could not enforce its reforms until 2007, 2008. That change came through not structures change, but change of personnel within the institutions that control higher education. He gave a lot of statistics about the status of higher education in Turkey between 2003, 2002. For example, the number of universities went from 78 to 2000, from 78 universities to 208 universities, including both public and foundation. That's 3 times. The number of students from 1.8 million to 8.3 million. International students from 15,000 plus to 224,000. Number of PhDs from about 27,000 to about 95,000, and so on and so forth. He said that there are now 8.3 million across all universities in Turkey. And he also showed the budget, which in 2003 was 3.4 billion Turkish liras. I don't know how much that in dollars at the time, but now it's about 57.7 billion Turkish liras. And he said that needs to be increased Per student, approximately that's 15,000 plus Turkish liras of expenses. On the publications, said we produce in Turkey in Scopus type journals about 48,000, which is about 17th. I think 67,000, 17th across the world, with about 8,000 patents, which is about 13th across the world. And in terms of human resources and R&D, there are about 200 plus thousand people who work on that. We have 20 what he called research-based universities, as York classifies them, type 1, 2, and 3. He said that might be impressive in Turkey, but it doesn't really record worldwide. He talked also about the quality and accreditation, and he gave a lot of status, a lot of statistics and recommendations. And he also talked about the presence or existence of a higher education quality board that came in 2017. He talked about the challenges of higher education, the problem with quality, supply and demand, the need to increase research and development budget, particularly if the goal is to reach the 10th economy in the world. That needs to be invested in for knowledge production. And as well as international mobility for students. He gave some conclusions regarding management, diversity, organization, autonomy, accountability, transparency, and input versus output control. That was fascinating, Dr. Nihad, and I had a lot of questions actually, because I did not know much of the history, know a little bit. And coming to Turkey, I have my own impressions coming to Turkey after I taught for 20 years in the US. So there's a lot to talk about. I would like to ask for a 5-minute break, if that's okay with you, Norsam, and then we'll come back to just freshen up, get tea or cookies or something. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes to have our fourth presenter, and then we'll go to questions and answers. Thank you. 5-minute break. I wasn't heard. Sorry. All right. For the next 25 minutes, we'll resume with our fourth presenter on social policies and culture with Dr. Norsam Keskin Aksay.
Thank you very much. It's a kind of big pleasure for me to speak here. It was a bit hectic for me according to my schedule, but I did it finally, alhamdulillah, and I am here. Today I will be talking about social policies and culture, but I have to maybe share first that I am coming from sociology and philosophy backgrounds, but my expertise areas are based on fieldwork, and I am mostly calling myself social and cultural anthropologist. That's why it will be, of course, including sociological analysis, it will be much more an anthropological outlook, looking at social policies and culture. That's why I can say that I am a bit expert on culture, but not social policies, although I am working on social policies projects with SETA for the last 1 year. That's why I will be trying to look at the culture as a conceptual framework and how academically it is taken in social sciences mostly, and how my own analysis about it, and then how I want to show that how it reflects on the social policies in Turkey in different ways to show the historical repertoire and social memory about this, and how the current politics are, let's say, negotiating and contesting with it, I would say. That's why actually I am thankful to the Professor Köroğlu and Akın, because they gave me all the historical outlook of the issue, because it's very hard to explain the public sphere dynamics and politics in Turkey, actually. And Professor Akın showed that how the governance, the idea of governance changed in process, and also how the idea of religion and Islam has been transformed, is also coming from Köroğlu. That's why I am very thankful. I will not be getting into the historical details. This is also a reminder. I will begin with culture, with a discussion that mostly in social sciences, in sociology, but in anthropology as well, this is the most important but most problematic word. That's why I want to also thank you, Professor Imrian, to give me this concept again, because this is, maybe some of you also know that we have certain problematic concepts in academia, and this is one of them, to define and to explain and to discuss and to see the applications as well. That's why mostly when we are discussing to define culture, we are trying to look at first at what are our prejudices or what are our taken for granted understanding about culture. For example, what we understand when we call Indian culture. And mostly my students are saying that hojam colors, hojam dancing, this kind of things. And these are showing that how we understood culture, but it is of course more than this and more deeper than this. Even in politics, even in macro level, international politics, it is there. But that's why I will be trying to understand that, how culture is in transformation, and how it is understood, and how it is used in micro and macro policies and also politics. This is very problematic for the definition, but at the same time, it is always in the process. This is the other problem we have in culture, because we are mostly thinking that when I asked, for example, what is Turkish culture, we are having the intention to think that it is static, it is stable, and it is always there, but mostly it is not. And that's why this is the most important issue to look at the social policies in Turkey, because even as Akın was trying to show that there are different, let's say, parts of AK Party to look at governance, to look at social policies. That's why it's also related at how the understanding of culture is changing. The most common and most accepted definition for culture is this, but this is even so much ambiguous, because you have to, let's say, fulfill all the concepts there. That complex whole, which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities and habits acquired by humans as member of society. This is still so much problematic, because we have to also deal with that. What is belief? for a society? What is art? What are morals? That's why we have to look at as an analytical category to culture, and we have to know that how we have to take it first. And that's why we have to also look at it academically, how the concepts are developing in certain disciplinary base, yeah, in sociology or in political science, etc. That's why like here we are looking at that what's mostly the philosophical and theoretical outlook of culture is, but at the same time what practitioners, yeah, like in other words, the fieldwork experience-based social scientists are doing about it. Because this first side participant observation or like the experience with them is also showing how it transformed. That's why I have to take this ethnographic and so-called cultural anthropological outlook. It's also coming with gears that like there has to be always a thick description about culture. Because culture is like public, because meaning is public at the same time. What does it mean? If you like talk about culture, you have to talk about like meaning attributions to your belief, to your, I don't know, food, to your clothes, everything. That's why it is always public. It is shared, it is interactive, it is always, let's say, in a society and a community. That's why the anthropological outlook for this is like you have to look at culture as a context, which is never stable and static. And that's why we need this like thick description discussion, and thick description in anthropological manner is only possible with participant observation, which means if you want to understand culture, you have to be there. This is like the understanding of thick description. You have to experience, you have to be there. Why I am explaining this all stuff? Because after also making some research on social policies in Turkey and how to create social policy for Turkey, we understood that certain methodological misses are so much important. For example, if you do a kind of social policy on family in Turkey, I mean, this is based on certain systematical or number-based kind of statistics, but the fieldwork experience or the local experience is missing. That's why the text description is showing us that how culture is so much deeply embedded that it is not easy to understand. That's why, of course, we are talking about macro systematics and mechanisms when we are talking about social policies, but the micro is mostly underestimated. That's why the culture is reminding here us methodologically that how we should take it. That's why I am reminding in social sciences there's a cultural turn. I mean, it has been, I think, three decades like so far, that mostly people are trying to say that in political science, in psychology, the culture should be more and more included in the discussion. I mean, how the people are getting the meanings and how they are using it for certain kind of reactions. And that's why the cultural studies, semiotics, linguistics, post-structuralist kind of discussions are so much in power and in popular, like among students, among scholars nowadays, because it has been understood that it is not easy to find very successful, applicable, and sustainable policies without knowing the cultural dimensions. That's why the critical thinking through culture also begins, of course, with these discussions, that how like the macro and micro relations, macro structures and micro meanings can be related, how we understand the society works, how the society is structured. And interestingly, and very importantly for me as well, that when you look at culture, and the cultural turn, like after this, in the last 1 decade and maybe 15 years, I would say, there is a special turn, affective turn, which means that when they begin to look at cultures, they understood that the space making, what does it mean? The city making, for example, social policy, but what we are doing, a kind of millet bahçesi. What is it? Like a kind of society garden we are like organizing. Even organizing a garden like this should be including certain cultural and certain like special elements that you have to think about disabled people, you have to think about old people, you have to think about not only nuclear families, but more, let's say, extended families, etc. These are all the things that so many scholars begin to include to the social science dynamics. And then affective turn. I am also very excited about it. I am mostly working on, like recently, on affects and emotions, which means emotions are rarely talking political science and sociology because it is seen not objective. And that's why it was the, realm of psychology, but it is not the case. That's why I am so much excited. It has been discussed in United States and Europe and different, even Eastern kind of civilizational based scholars for a long time. But in Turkey, it is new. And we are trying to understand that how emotions are involved, how emotions should be involved in social policy making as well. And actually, this is very important in so many contexts, but Turkey is a very important context. If some of you already experienced something in Turkey or knows Turkey, and maybe know the very turning points of, 15th of July, or certain breaks, like certain triggering points of Turkey, you can see that the social solidarity discussion and the idea of community is so much emotional and so much effective in Turkey, and very complex. What does it mean? Nationalism, religion, and different cultural dynamics are going with it together. And if you cannot know this, social policies are not working perfectly in Turkey. This is the most important problem and most important thing that we have to look at culture and social policies together. And this part was like the very, very brief, let's say, taking from the historical discussion of Professor Akın and Köroğlu, that actually when we look at the culture, we can say that for the context of Turkey, we have a structured cultural hegemony in Turkey. I will not be getting to the theoretical discussion of Gramsci of cultural hegemony, but I will take only, let's say, briefly that how he is using it. We can just change it. We cannot maybe agree with him, but it's a very useful, category to understand Turkey, that by the Republic of Turkey, by the establishment of Republic of Turkey, the whole engineering project was actually, of course, on systems, on alphabet, on like certain systematical things, but it was mostly on social and cultural transformation. And that's why actually I am always giving this example, and I want to, because I am working on whaling. Whaling has never been banned in Turkey until 1980s. It's very interesting. Officially, it has never been banned in Turkey. But the veiled women or the religious people were always excluded. This is a social engineering project to look at culture and change culture deeply. You are not, because they know that you cannot ban whaling in Turkey easily at this period. It will be a civil war. We can change the idea of civil war, but it cannot be happening because the whole local values are based on whaling, religion, and the woman will be also reacting it as well. This is not about patriarchal understanding of Islamic families, etc. No, the woman will be also not accepting it. That's why all the cultural hegemony comes from this secular elites of Turkey, was about how actually religion is okay, but in their own small sphere, because they are uneducated, because they are like unrelated, they are not secular, they are not modern. That's why they are not so like threat to us. That's why they can be on the corner and excluded from public sphere. And this was coming ideologically from the idea of rationality, bureaucracy, positivism, impersonal system, numbers, and secularism. And we know that where it's come from, the westernization idea. And that's why in the public, a religious body, beard or a veiling or any kind of symbol, Quran courses, we can understand the imamative schools, any kind of relational, let's say, things has been always seen the, let's say, lower culture or lower traditional manner of Turkey. Okay, this was the attempt to create a cultural hegemony in Turkey, and it's worked, unfortunately. Actually, this doesn't mean that the local values of the people changed dramatically, no. But it worked to look at the public sphere because the visibility of religious people were always less. And they were not in labor force participation. They were not in education, of course, because of all the systematic exclusion. That's why the self-colonization discussion is here. But it was always the case in Turkey to understand that which Islam who's Islam and how. This is very important because we are sometimes having the idea that we are talking about non-Muslims in Turkey when we are talking about seculars. No, this was always about Islam, but which Islam was always the case. That's why it is much more cultural than ever. And because we are not, and the argument is they are not rejecting Islam, but they are saying that how, with which cultural codes you should do it. That's why the self-colonization discussion is so much important in Turkey, especially when you look at the like post-colonialism discussions as well. I mean, because Turkey has never been militaristically or physically colonized, of course, but the self-colonization discussion from the late Ottoman Empire time is very important. But it is also not for secular people only. This is also coming to the AK Party policies now, because you know that the culture is not static and very transformative. This means that when you are living in a certain public sphere, which is already established like secular, this all other groups are also changing accordingly. Maybe not fully, but changing. That's why maybe some of you also mentioned that AK Party policies were firstly saying that this is not an Islamic party, an Islamist party. This is very much important. They never, like they even reject that they are an Islamist party, okay? And their first intervention was to get into the European Union. This is a very key part because they know that at the same time, I'm not saying that this is strategical or unintended, but they know that this will be the only possibility to be seen powerful in the state mechanism. And they use this, and that's why they changed them as well, which means actually AK Party has so many binary opposition within itself because it has to based on a secular state, based on a very, very westernized system, accept this old system, but at the same time try to create sort of alternative policy. This is so much hard, and this is also same the cultural binary oppositions we have in Turkey, actually, very, very much overlapping. Okay, that's why actually, if we can say that the AK Party's policies beginning with the European Union participation process, and that's why so many constitutional changes has been done in Turkey. You cannot see in the history of Turkey, actually. I mean, and also social inclusiveness was one of the very important arguments of AK Party for Romani people, for Kurdish people, for so many different groups, but at the same time, for different religious groups as well. Yani, these are all others of Turkey. These were always the others of Turkey. Of course, with Romani people, with Alevis and with Kurdish people, it didn't work well because of other kind of political, let's say, conflicts after all. But even if this is the case, the most social inclusiveness environment have been created in Turkey by AK Party. This has to be done. It is most important thing that we have to say. And that's why the representation of different marginalized groups were always in the policies. Yani when they are doing social policies, we can say that this is coming from European Union ideas. No, actually, they have been internalized it. And they were working for another. Yani the religious group in Turkey was always another. That's why they know that how it is a marginalized group, being a marginalized group, and they were working for it. And that's why they feel and they make it in political realm as well. They were trying to attribute meanings, local values, and like not necessarily religious values, but this is like local values and how culture, past, heritage is important in Turkey. Okay, that's why actually this most important I think achievement of AK Party can be said that it finds a very important academic, even maybe they are not aware of it, academic look at the culture because they are looking at the local most. They are trying to look at, maybe not in a comprehensive or holistic way, but they were looking at it. But this was not the understood idea mostly by secular groups or by the public. But like when we compare the Republican area and after until AK Party and AK Party process itself, this was always mostly exclusion and inclusion of certain groups in the public. Yani, it was the case that this is always the question in Turkey: who is the public? And still we are talking about this discussion. Yani, because in Istanbul, for example, you are a public in certain districts, but you are not a public in certain districts. For example, if you are in Fatih as a like with a veiling, you are seen that you are the public. But if you are in Bebek, you are seen. I am saying it because this is very ethnographic to understand the like upper level politics as well, which means that that's why Erdogan is not so much accepted in European like union policies, because he is the Islamist symbol of everything in Turkey. Okay, I mean that's why he is not fit into the Western politicization or like this kind of things. Veiling is also the case. All the veiled women are AK Party supporters, you know, in Turkey. And this is the idea that always, or all the like Islamic looking, whatever it is, people are related with AK Party as well. These are very important to see that how the cultural elements and symbols attributed to bodies, then to politics, and then to create the articulation actually. But in the AK Party area, we can talk about more social inclusion, representation of different groups, as I said, local context-based approaches, and rise in the visibility of various cultural elements. This was beginning with the religious bodies and people, but then with migration, international people and students, it was also about other cultures. Yeah, and it can be Syrian, it can be, I don't know, different cultural realms were much more visible in public sphere. Kurdish as well. Armenian has been like having so much like voice more than ever for Turkey, the Christians in Turkey. I mean, I did so many interviews with Christians as well. They were saying that this is the first time Christians have so many rights. But this has never been understood in this way. And I will come to this picture and I will explain. This has been never understood in this way because of the symbolic and cultural attributions. And this was always seen that, okay, AK Party did so many liberal policies, but they are doing it for this strategical purpose and this aim. At the end, their aim is the Islamist, I don't know, Sharia understanding. I am just sarcastically exaggerating the dichotomies to make you understand, okay? Because these are mostly the dichotomies which is similar to this discussion. That's why I am referring to colonialism. This is, you know, the university students, veiled university students situation after 1980s in Turkey. This is the students of medicine out of the university. They have been kicked out from the university. And this is also like coming with the idea that how this was always the racial binary opposition in the United States and in different kind of contexts, that the colored versus white, I don't know, the Christian versus like Muslim, the Kurdish versus Turkish as well. These are all the dimensions, but like this all binary opposition understood is bringing us the idea that the question that is AK Party creating an hegemonic culture, or can AK Party create a hegemonic culture with this outlook and with this approach? This was always the discussion, and that's why I am working on Islamic bourgeoisie discussions. And this was because the like bureaucratic elite was supposed to do this cultural transformation in Turkey, and this has been done before by the secular elites. So it's been always understood that Erdogan and the bureaucrats are trying to create another cultural hegemony in Turkey. I would say that this is not the case, because the systematical and the structural public sphere is never Islamic or never religious or never based on the local cultures of the bureaucratic elites of AK Party. And the cultural hegemony is partially hegemonic because the system is not changing. And the system is still the same. And the alternative approaches of mostly AK Party is understood a kind of, let's say, threatening positioning to secularism and to the secular state. That's why they are like, even again, veiling example. After AK Party came to power, how many years do you know that it has been taken to get veiling as an informal, let's say, kind of non-banned issue in universities and public sphere? Yes. I mean, this is the case. Even they were like using strategically not get into the veiling, but the system itself, even today, what we are talking about in constitution, that how veiling should be included or not, and in which way. Okay, I mean, that's why, of course, we are visible, or so many alternative cultural elements are visible, but this doesn't mean that the embedded cultural and political system is changing. Okay, that's why like the social solidarity elements, AK Party sometimes creating, and not by AK Party supporters only, by the way, yani, okay, is also the case. But like the idea that we in relation to social policies here, and the problematic issue in relation to social policies is that AK Party, some politicians and some social policymakers are thinking that the culture is still static. Okay, and then and of course they have the idea of resistance to change. You know, the conservative groups, if we are calling it in this way, conservative groups have this always the resistance for change and crystallizations of meaning, and I mean culture, real norms, and local values. This doesn't mean that the culture should be questioned, etc. No, but the culture should be looked at with the dimension of changes in the world and in the society, and then reformulated the social policies. And this is the problem. That's why these are the created dichotomies. I think most of you know and mentioned: secular versus religious, rational versus emotional, objective versus subjective. This is also going to the picture I was showing you: West versus East, left versus right, and veiled versus unveiled. And based on the cultural conceptualization discussion of mine, this is never the case. The binary oppositions are not so clear-cut as it is discussed nowadays, especially. Okay, and that's why, but we are using them as a binary opposition to create certain political mechanisms. Because, I mean, who is secular nowadays? We can discuss in so many ways, because so many women, religious men and women are in secular spaces now. And they are acting secularly in so many manners. But they are also having their religious values and trying to create an alternative let's say life for themselves. That's why the incompatibility of AK Party with modernity, state, democracy, freedom and human rights will be always there if it is used. For example, in an election time, they will use it. They will say that AK Party is against human rights. Why? Because they will be showing that the patriarchal elements are there, and AK Party was always a very wrong choice to have a state power. Like these are used, but this is not the case, because we know that in 2003, AK Party did a very, very liberal constitutional like code for women rights. I mean, we know it. I mean, I know the whole codes as well, but these discourses are used so much, and examples are coming even from like today, that how they cannot I don't know, save the women's rights, etc. I want to finish with my example from the fieldwork. We did 1 year, almost 1 year research with SETA, Foundation for Political, Economic and Social Research, with Romani, let's say, disabled and aged people, citizen of Turkey, in 9 cities and 28 focus groups. As I am saying in the cultural part, we were there, we experienced their networks and their environment, and then we asked them, we let them discuss, we let them just share their own opinions. And it was very interesting that these were the thematic main outcomes. Even it is coming from secular or religious background, the main issue is the family. I mean, the social policies are never taken individually, for example, for Turkey and the citizens, which is a very important different thing for a cultural understanding of Turkey, because it is not the case always in Europe or in some states of United States. I will not say all states, but some states of United States, for example, family. This is important. Then you have to put it in the social policies. For example, like social perception, inclusiveness and representation. Even if you are giving so much material needs to them, if they are not feeling that they are included and represented by state, they are never feeling emotionally satisfied, for example. It's very interesting. They are saying that, state is giving us so much money, education, etc. But let's say, like the bus driver is always making me, let's say, discriminating me because I am a disabled person. Is it clear? Because the emotion itself is understood from them as a state policy, even by bus driver, because this transportation is based on the state. I mean, we are not thinking in this way, but this complex realm is so much important. The socialization and daily practices, for example, for old people, we are mostly talking about how they should be cared at home. No, they need different kind of social spaces. They want to have friendship. They want to have different kind of, I don't know, free time, accessibilities. This is the cultural understanding as well. Think about Anatolian cities. Where are the aged people? In coffee houses or in their own social spaces in front of their buildings. If you cannot make it in social policies, they will not be accepted or they will not be successful. Lastly, I can show that with this research, we came up with the idea that the social, emotional, and material needs are always related with the moral welfare and material welfare, but they are always also in relationship, which means the spiritual is much more a secular term. That's why I am using moral, but the spiritual welfare, manevi refah, is also the material welfare, the maddi refah, is very much important to understand social, emotional, and material needs. And mostly the social needs, emotional needs, and material needs are different. Families in social needs mostly, but it is also in the emotional needs, for example. If you cannot support a family of a person, she or he will not be satisfied by the state or policies or the understanding of life. And let's say, lastly, I am trying to show that in social policies, the social realm, emotional realm, and material realm should be talked together. In Turkey, we are getting so much secular sometimes, and in social policies, we are using numbers, rationality, and everything more than the emotions of the people. And even we have certain social policies focusing on these issues, we are not representing it. This is mostly my suggestion, to look at all the social policies issues with this emotional and social perspective, and much more a methodological approach to underline the cultural issue. Okay, thank you very much. I already just spoke so much, I guess.
Thank you very much, Dr. Aksay. She took an anthropological outlook into the issues and the topic at hand, social policies and culture. She emphasized culture, but also with some applications on social policies. She asked several questions at the beginning: where, whose culture, the cultural product. She also posed the questions of the association of cultures with places and identity, and the transportation or the transfer of cultures within global networks. She also attempted to define culture, taking a classical definition as a complex whole that includes knowledge, belief, arts, morals, law, custom, and so on and so forth. She also took an ethnographical approach, what she termed as thick description to culture, meaning culture is a public and shared and interactive among the people within the same culture. She talked also about the social policies need for the thick description, meaning that you have to be on the ground with the people in order to impact their lives as you develop social policies. In short, culture needs to be included in the discussion upon developing any sustainable policies, she says. Critical thinking also, she talked about the importance of it through cultures, an understanding of society and thinking through not just the micro meanings, but through macrostructures, also through micro meanings and practices. She emphasized the study of emotions in developing social policies, as well as social solidarity discussions, the same as nationalism or the status or the impact of religion. She also posed several questions when it comes to these things. She says those who push back against the inclusion of religion or spirituality in public life, they try not to attack directly nowadays Islam, but they question which Islam and whose Islam and how. It's a self-colonization discussion. And she gave also the example of banning of the veil, which was officially banned in the 1980s, yet those who practice it were excluded for a long time from being in the public sphere. She talked about local values versus those who have secular, those who are secular elites, who look at religion as okay, but within their own spheres, those who practice it, and the need for this elite, for the others to be excluded from the public sphere. She talked also about the structural cultural hegemony in Turkey. What are the forces? Political rationality, bureaucracy, positivism, secularism, impersonal system, and so on and so forth. And the argument is that they don't reject religion directly, but they ask these questions about Islam in order to exclude it from any meaningful public presence. The AK Party reject, of course, that they are an Islamist party. In fact, they argued for a long time at the beginning within the framework of the EU membership to institute certain policies on the issue of exclusion and inclusion and human rights. She gave several examples on the Romani and Kurdish and others who were excluded before the AK Party came to power. It also, she says, as if the AK Party found an academic or an interesting way to impart culture to its two-decade rule. It was about inclusion and exclusion of certain ways, was who is public and who is excluded. She gave the example of that impact within even Istanbul in the Fatih district or the Bebek district, who would be the public face or who would be impacting social policies. Those who cover with the veil, with the hijab, will be obviously a majority within Fatih, and they will be looked at with disdain in the Bebek district. Islamic-looking individuals, appearances versus ideology or politics does play a role in instituting understanding of social policies. Also think with the increase of migration, international students, and so on and so forth, this also give it a global outlook within the context of Istanbul. And now we have even different groups who were excluded or not players. Now they may play a role like the Kurds, Syrians, Christians, Armenians, and so on and so forth. The AK Party was able to create this. She asked the question that's being asked, is the AK Party, can it create a hegemonic culture or impact social change in a drastic way? She thinks that's not the case. She gave several reasons as social solidarity or the Asabiyya, the value-based local structure. These are elements that play a role. System is the same. It took years for the AK Party to actually impact the issue of veil in Turkey. I think more than a decade, which was used by the opposition. She also posed the question about the compatibility or incompatibility between the AK Party and several of the concepts and how they are being used by the opposition to attack the AK Party. Things like state, democracy, modernity, freedom, human rights, how these issues come in every election and in society as the opposition try to argue against the AK Party positions on these issues. She concluded by saying she's been part of a one-year research project in which they looked at certain segments of society, the Romani, the aged or senior citizens, and the disabled, in 28 focus groups in 9 cities. There was interesting outcomes concerning the family structure, the social perception and inclusiveness, the educational, the health services, employment, and so on and so forth. And she concluded by saying there has to be social and emotional as well as material needs addressed in any kind of social policies. And she detailed what each one represents. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you for all our speakers. They've really done a wonderful job for a limited time. It was a very important and really rich discussion we had. Because of the time limitation with 6 o'clock already, I'm going to allow just 2 or 3 questions from the floor. And then I'm going to give each of our presenter 5 minutes to conclude or to say anything, maybe even respond to a question. At the same time, I had my own questions, particularly for each speaker. I'm going to reserve them until I hear everybody. And if nobody asks questions, I will do that on their behalf. Anybody who would like to say any question? Yes, Aslam. and you can address it to whoever you like.
Assalamu alaikum. I think I'll start with Dr. Aksai because it's fresh in my mind, and I found the entire presentation extremely stimulating. So thank you for that. I'm just struck by the idea of what a recent scholar called an imperialist imaginary, and I mean the Ottoman Empire is something that prevailed for 600 years. So this kind of a weighty institution obviously leaves an imprint on its subjects, on its citizens, and this is something that's carried through. And you spoke about the whole issue of veiling and so forth. And as you were speaking, I was thinking about how politics has become a means of institutionalizing embodied practices. So if we look at the history of modern Turkey, in the time of Ataturk, it was about the imposition of Western dress, the wearing of hats, the changing of language. As far as I know, Turkey is the only Muslim country that has a national beer. And I mean, keeping dogs as pets. These were practices that were, for lack of a better description, institutionalized. And when we move over to the last 21 years of the struggle that the AK Party has had in also institutionalizing certain practices, the struggle over the veil, the issue of building in the public spaces. I mean, the building of mosques. There's an anecdote. I had a German colleague, a diplomat who we spoke to recently, and I asked him about his view on drinking in Turkey, and he said, well, the AK Party has been very clever about it. They haven't banned alcohol, but they passed a law that says you're not allowed to have a bar within 400 meters of a mosque. So Erdogan has been building mosques everywhere. So what's interesting is the way people see it. And well, I guess to go about in a roundabout way, the contradiction we sit with today through these interventions of state, through this imperialist kind of imaginary, is the problem of, especially in Ankara, all these veiled women walking dogs. So, how do we deal with such
Yeah. Veiled woman in Turkey doesn't exist in media and TV series. And recently it's coming. I know, but not the need level as a Muslim country. If we are a Muslim country,
It's coming from us.
it's not mine. Okay. Okay. And in case you find her, for example, last week I was, changing channels and I found a new TV series named Omar. If you found her with a lot of kids, with a poor husband, and she do not think objectively. So why, since you are married with a poor man, why this number of children? So she's mad. She's a mad woman. And she cannot give objective decisions in her life. So the question here is, why Muslim people, not the politicians? We have many rich Muslim peoples. Why they do not make films, TV series that show the real picture, the real face, the objective Muslim woman? Why? In Turkey, exactly. In
They're
Turkey,
busy doing
especially in
Turtle and Osman, and that's what they have been history.
it's history, yeah.
No, I'm saying
I mean,
the religious people
Yeah.
have been concentrating on
Yeah.
historical, not modern. Okay,
I mean, at this
I
time.
know.
Thank you so much.
Just making it hard, Okay, anyone else would like to say anything?
السلام عليكم الله يعطيكم العافية. اسمي يد رشدي أبو ناصر. طبعا أنا عرفت في الجلسة الماضية أسير محرر من فلسطين. يعني بيستدعي التعريف مرة ثانية والله ما على طول. بالوقت يعني من خلال سرد التاريخ المعاصر احنا تناولناه في هذه الإضافة النوعية والمكثفة، يعني مشكورة الدكتورة وجميع الحاضرين. ما بعد السلطنة العثمانية كما اسميتموها، وللمفارقة أنا أحضر مسلسل قيامة أرطغرل وبعد ذلك عثمان، يعني وقارئ للتاريخ، أنا مختص دارس للتاريخ. وصولا إلى السلطان عبد الحميد الثاني أيضا كله يعني تم العمل عليه بطريقة يعني طريقة مسلسل وما إلى ذلك، وإلى حد بعيد هو لامس الحقيقة طبعا. هل يمكن المقارنة أو المقاربة والتوصل أن البديل الثقافي والاجتماعي حقيقة مجردة بعيدا عن العواطف، الآن نتكلم بطريقة علمية، تتمثل في المنهج الإسلامي الحضاري الذي يحترم الزمان والمكان والإمكان بطريقة لا تتعارض مع اختلاف الثقافات والأقليات في مجتمع ما، والحديث اليوم عن حزب العدالة في الساحة التركية. ممكن إحداث مقاربة بهذه الطريقة، وشكرا جزيلا.
All right, thank you very much. I have one more question, and then I'll give the microphone to our presenters. The question I have has to do with how we understand the Turkish voter, and I'm not particularly looking for an answer regarding the upcoming elections. I just want to know how the average citizen in Turkey evaluates, assesses the performance of the AK party for the past 20 years. Which takes precedence? Which is more important in their life? Of course, the traditional Western view is that economics always trumps everything else. Is that the case here in Turkey? What would be the depth of the following issues in the mind of the voter? Which one takes precedence? Is it, for example, moral values, religion, the state of religion, the role of religion? Are people, religious people, we're going to value the fact that the veil or the hijab now is not banned anymore, and it's everywhere, that this could be a retreat if other secular forces take power, or could be retreat from the role of religion in public life, and that will trump their economic situation? Is it the issue of sovereignty and autonomy that people think that Turkey has reached in a certain way, rather than being simply a dormant member of NATO that does what it's asked to do? Is it how we rank and take pride in the fact that the research and development, defense industries, the number of universities that you have, that gives us said, okay, this is really where we're heading, and that gives it, do they give it enough credit on that? Or is it the question of human rights and authoritarianism that people think the AK party now is returning back to institutions, some policies that they were a victim of, and some people see heavy-handed of the bureaucracy or of the state? Or is it personal freedoms? Where do you see all these issues playing a role in the mind of that? Which one trumps the other? Which one takes precedence over the others? And what are the implications in terms of social policies? Because many people may think that the AK party was taking a certain direction, and then in the past, in stage 4, that there is a stark difference between stage 1 and stage 4. You were talking about 4 different stages where it was, as it was trying to ascend to the European Union standards and legal reforms and other reforms, and where you are today. How do you see? And of course, some of it is exaggerated, some of it is true, and you have all things in between. So I know we have limited time, but if you could also somehow, if you think this question is related to your presentation, please try to answer it. and I will try to finish no later than 6:40. So that's a maximum of 25 minutes. So that gives about each person 6 minutes or so. Is that all right? Okay, we'll start that way.
Okay. Your question was related to my presentation. Here we can see the voting behavior. In Turkey, we cannot define people that based on homo economicus or something like that. We have cultural circles, and this cultural circle affects us. And also in the circle, we can see, of course, economic components, religious components, values, also sensations, and also scaring. If you ask my wife, she graduated after 34 years old because of that headscarf banning. Now she's scaring if Kılıçdaroğlu won. I know it is so difficult to ban headscarf or something like that in Turkey again, but she lived that. This is a generation difference. But our niece, she said that she will support Kılıçdaroğlu, and also she wear headscarf. And yeah, she's young because she doesn't know what her mother lived, her aunt lived. So we have living that changing in our neighborhoods also. So there are different components as well. For example, the Kurdish issue. Until 2015 elections, AK Party got more than HDP from Kurdish people. They supported more. But after, you know, my categorization, after the third and fourth period, today it is so difficult to get their votes for AK Party. But as we spoke before, Tayyip Erdogan is very stronger game maker of the politicians in Turkey. So maybe he can win that election, but he's in risk because of these changings. And also the new generation is unclear. Yes, cultural changing will show that in that issue, in that subject. I can say that. In your question, I can add something. The cultural power is still not belong to conservatists and Islamists in Turkey because of their sociological background. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Akin. Next is Dr. Kurulu. Is he with us? Yes.
Yeah, I'm here, but anyone ask me any question particularly, or
I did ask you a question regarding the strength of secularism in Turkey and whether this will trump any other forces, or with the fear that Dr. Akin talked about regression back to secular groups and elites taking precedence, where religious people could actually vote their interests in ways that could trump other concerns, like foreign policy or economics. Is that factor still there? Because that was what prompted for many voters what the AK Party strength was coming from these conservative circles. But do people feel, no, we have these gains now, I don't have to worry about anymore, I can actually go and elect liberal or secular people without any fear for regression? Yeah, that was my question. There were other questions also that had to deal with, secular forces within society and how strong or not strong being in society today.
In fact, I think as I point out in my presentation, in Turkey, the people, the voters, are not leaning to kind of extreme sides of the politics. They are not support kind of ultra secular policies or kind of politics in Turkish politics, and also they are not leaning to kind of extreme Islamist or Islamic values to represent in Turkish politics. And this is very important measurement in Turkish politics. Now, in the Turkish politics, yeah, seculars are concerning on something, the future of the Turkish politics, because they are thinking we don't have any good future for our children, for kind of secular values, or for some kind secular ideas or ideals similar like this. But I think this does not represent most of the voters or most of the secular people of Turkey. Even in Turkey, we can say the religious people, most of the religious people are not ultra-religious people, and they are not behaving when they are voting kind of ultra-religious sides. And also the seculars are not voting as they are ultra secular demands. But when you see on the TVs or some medias some ultra secular demands, or some ultra Islamist demands or arguments or suggestions, these are not represents or the reflects on the voting behavior or the results on Turkish politics. For example, why AK Party losing the religious people support for some several years? Because most of the religious people think this is not okay for kind of extent religious policies in Turkish politics. Also, why the people left to support Refah Partisi or other Milli Görüş parties when their policies are going to be more Islamic or more conservatives. Even the religious people says enough. We don't want to see a kind of ultra Islamist or religious policies in Turkish politics. I mean, this is the same for the secular people also in Turkish politics. Yes, as I mentioned in my presentation, the secular people, there are many secular people in Turkey, more than any other Islamic countries, but they also know we are living in Turkey, and this is the Muslim country, and they know our demands are some secular or non-religious demands are not compatible with Turkish general societies demands, and they know this is not possible to implement all kind of ultra secular policies in Turkish politics as well. Because maybe you can say this is very naive opinion to Turkish politics, but according to me, in Turkish politics, the extremist sides are not don't have any chance to implement their politics in Turkish politics so far.
Thank you very much. Next is Dr. Özdemir.
Okay, thank you. I'm not a political scientist. I am from business administration department, but I have some observation. The first one is the fear of old days for women is important, I think, as Mahmut Akın said. especially for those who experience the ban of headscarf or similar practices. Second one is some believe and don't trust opposition management capacity of the economy or politics or international relations. That's another topic we should take into account. Also, there are some psychological barriers for giving vote for Republican. You have to say Republican People Party. Psychological barrier. Some people in Turkey. That's a third one. Also, some believe there are some problems in Turkey. That's true in economy or some fields, but opposition will not solve also. They believe they will be the same. They criticize something, they will do the same thing in their mind. Also, in opposition, there is no project for the future of Turkey. Only the project is changing government. After changing government, no idea, no project. That's therefore no hope for the voters. And the critical thing, I think, for the experience of AK Party, self-criticism is very important. AK Party now. If they criticize themselves and give hope for society, again, I think the AK Party will be successful, according to me. And we need a deep and real self-criticism of AK Party. We need.
Yeah.
You are not sure whether they want to cover or not.
Okay, I mean, I think the question of yourself was already answered, but I want to answer briefly my very good question. Thank you very much, by the way. And these are very good questions that I didn't maybe underline so much in the presentation. I can begin with sorry, what was your name again? Aslan. The discussion is already, I was mentioning in briefly that the state is state, and AK Party is already state, and bourgeoisie is bourgeoisie. And that's why I'm not arguing that they are not doing the same thing. They are doing the same thing, because the systematical state and systematical bourgeois elite is working very similarly in a way. That's why it is intended or non-intended there should be more researches. But of course, they are trying to find some strategical and tactical mechanisms to avoid or to prevent alcohol in the public sphere in a different way, but using the same state systematics. Is it clear? That's why I was saying that the culture AK Party is trying to maybe distribute is not hegemonic. They are trying to create certain kind of differences in terms of education, in terms of, let's say, public sphere use, but this is not a systematical change. And I think this is the most important and big problem of AK Party, that they couldn't change deeply systems and they couldn't construct new systems. And that's why they are using, for example, veiled women as well for their politics. And this is very big kind of criticism to AK Party. They are always even making more binary, the binary opposition sometimes, if it is working for their politics. Because this is state, this is party, this is politics, it's working in this way. But I am trying to show that they are having certain still social cultural understanding which can have more representation from the local. This is the difference, I can say. And for your question, this is about the, let's say, historical exclusion, actually, because so many people, artists, etc., have been always excluded from the spheres. And now, if they want to include it, systematical barriers are there. But at the same time, cultural and ideological barriers as well. Because you know that there are so many discussions about, for example, having a Netflix, let's say, series. How many religious Muslim in Turkey or directors will be making it in Netflix? Even there are ideological and cultural barriers in themselves, because how to present Muslim women is not clear enough in the religious groups as well. Yani, they should be in the TV or not. This is also our inner discussions. Yani, the inner discussions are very important. You have to understand they are heterogeneous, but the inner discussions are so much important. And the representation is by secular people are in this way. You are saying that traditional, uneducated, backwards, etc. But as actually Professor Akın was saying it, This is the case. So many veiled women are thinking that burqa is so marginal and it cannot be allowed in the public sphere in Turkey. So many veiled women, I am saying, not secular, I mean, so-called secular. So many veiled women thinking that the whole charshaf is so much and burqa is so much. And even we cannot think that can be in constitution. In Turkey, it should be in constitution, but it is not in constitution. This is a very, very slow step. Yani it is changing a bit. Yes, of course. Okay, which one? Okay, sorry. Like you are trying to say that how this education cannot work like very properly because it's not inner discussion, but mindset. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Actually, I think I have to be fair enough for AK Party and the educationist like and social policy discussions and alternative universities. I am in one of them, and I will be answering the question of your colleague in this way that, I mean, there are new alternative ways to do it, but they are so gradual steps. Yeah, and they are not so like, because there are so many elements preventing students to do this. For example, historical heritage. How you are bringing it. For example, Osman and Ertuğrul is so much problematic, even for sociology students. That's why they are saying that, Hocam, if they are bringing history in this way, I am not accepting this history. Youth is in this way. And they are right in so many ways. Because what you are bringing is very much problematic. And when you bring women and family, this is so much compatible and controversial. How you will do it? Yani, this is... No, that's why I will be coming to the alternative issue that in Ibn Khaldun, for example, we are trying, I would say, because it's not easy. Being an alternative research university is so hard, and creating a sociology department from nowhere is also so hard, because the system, the academic education is secular already, and we are in a university. We have to accept this. But alternatively, for example, we are using hadiths or like kalam or different kind of even Sufism discussions academically into sociological discussion. This is also like the emotional turn, how multiplexity can work. Of course, not from Islam only, from Asian kind of civilization, from different civilization, what can work. We are trying to make our schedule in this way, curriculum in this way, and trying to do this. I don't know how it will work, but we are trying to do this. But Islam can work like in methodological way as well, in the cultural way as well, but it's a long way, I would say. Not pessimistic, but optimistic long way.
At the end of this long day and very fruitful, very outstanding presentations we've had all day, I want to thank Dr. Mahmoud Haki Akin, Dr. Ahmed Gurulu, Dr. Nihad Ovdumush, and Dr. Nursam Kaskin Aksai for their presentations. And I hope we can have you another time to expand on some of the presentations. I think they were excellent presentations. I really had a lot of questions, but I think that's a good and excellent start. I want to remind everybody that we will continue our discussion on the evaluation and assessment and examining of the AK Party rule. Tomorrow we have the third session, which would be on defense. Sorry, it will be on socio-economic policies and performance at 10 o'clock in the morning. We will have three presentations: economic policies and performance by Dr. Mehmet Babajan from the Türkiye Central Bank, followed by politics and development of the Islamic finance industry in Turkey by Dr. Murat Yash from Marmara University, and thirdly, poverty and socioeconomic policies and performance from Dr. Mehmet Fatih Aysan, also from Marmara. And tomorrow afternoon, 2:30, we will have session 4 on defense and national security policies and performance. Dr. Omar Aslan will talk about civil-military relations in Turkey under the AK Party, and followed by defense and national security policies and strategic imperatives by Dr. Shinak Akturk from Koç University, and finally, foreign policy under the AK Party rule, international relations with and great powers, Dr. Ozdan Zeynep Oktav from Istanbul.